Yo, what's going on YouTube? It is your boy GZTV. Man, we are back with horror, finally. We're here with the 2021 American horror film directed by James Wan from a screenplay by Akela Cooper, based on a story by Wan, Ingrid Bisu, and Cooper. We have Malignant, a movie I've wanted to watch for a pretty long time, never got around to it. Now here we are. We are back to more movies, of course, and now we are back with a horror, a genre that kind of started this channel movie reviews-wise for me. Those were really the type of movies I started off reviewing, and now we're back to it. Again, shout out to Cody Leach for making me a horror fan as well. Again, Malignant. James Wan is incredible. Obviously, the creator behind the Saw franchise. You get Insidious, The Conjuring, Annabelle, The Nun, that whole kind of universe. The guy's been everywhere. One of the most iconic horror directors of the modern era, and by the time it's all said and done, you could probably argue ever one of the most iconic to ever do it. I mean, my goodness. He even does some action movies too. Absolute legend. And this isn't my first go around with his movies, obviously, but I thought I would give him his flowers while I'm here. He might be one of the best directors, period, of the modern era. Like, just for some context, this was his return to the horror genre after films like the Fast and Furious franchise, and he went to do Aquaman, the Aquaman movie. This guy's been everywhere. So yeah, this was his first horror movie back in a long time, and obviously you get McKenna Grace in this film too, so that's kind of a bonus. We've seen some movies with her in it on this channel. Not too familiar with the actors though. The other actors, we're gonna get into the premise, the good, the bad, the okay. Give it a review. Rating. So just getting into a quick premise, this movie follows Madison. I don't remember the actresses' names, I'm not very familiar with them anyway, who's paralyzed by shocking visions of grisly murders, and her torment worsens as she discovers that these waking dreams are in fact terrifying realities, and these are actual murders, these are actual killings that are taking place in the Seattle area where this movie takes place. Of course, 27 long years after the brutal Simeon Research Hospital incident, abused Madison wakes up in a hospital in present-day Seattle. But with numbing visions of murder getting in the way of a normal life more and more, Madison's obscure past emerges, baffling both herself and the local detectives. And this is kind of just like the layers of the onion. They're just starting to peel back stuff and more reveals. And this is a movie that really builds itself on plot twist. And I'm not opposed to that. I think it's awesome. Are these explicitly violent killings figments of Madison's troubled imagination? Either way, someone, or better yet, something, links the past to the present, demanding closure and blood. Is the boogeyman real? You'll have to watch this movie to find out. There's a lot of plot twist. Again, I'm gonna try not to spoil things, but let's just put it out there. This could be a spoiler review. So I would recommend you watch the movie before watching this review. There you go. Getting into the good, I actually really like the plot, and I think there is a lot of uniqueness to it. It's not the most revolutionary, right? It was still a little off the walls, for sure. This is still a very much shocking movie, and I like shock value movies. I know that sounds kind of dumb and generic and whatever you want to say. I personally enjoyed it. It was cool to get that level of gore as well, although I'm not a huge blood guy. I'm not a huge gore fan. I don't watch horror for that aspect, but like in a film to have blood in it and kills and stuff like that, I think that's awesome. Obviously we got it with the Deadpool movies, but very much so in this one, especially after my recent, recent expedition of watching new releases and comedies. Definitely a bit of an eyebrow raiser this movie was, especially with some of the transformation scenes. I won't go into too much detail, won't even show them on the screen. I think you guys should go watch this movie for yourself, because some of the stuff that happens, some of the scenes they pull off, some of the effects, and it's crazy, man. One thing I really appreciate here is that it kind of breaks the norm for a James Wan, typical possession movie, from the Conjuring universe and movies like that he became really famous for. And it goes into a slightly more natural, like genetic type of direction, which was unique and awesome for a change. This is a pretty refreshing movie. I think to an extent the concept is pretty unique. Obviously it feeds off of other films and other tropes and stuff, but still, just a unique movie in general. I mean, the setup, the lore, all of the plot twist. I will try not to spoil any here, but if you need to, cover your ears. If you think I'm even getting close to one, just cover your ears, just to be safe right now, alright? It's crazy, like, how this evil force comes to be. It's a lot of fun to kind of just watch this develop, and again, more things are being revealed as, Sydney's going through these tapes, her sister, the detectives are going through stuff. It's really dope. The plot twist alone, are just incredible, and it is definitely worth the watch if you are looking for a surprise. I love the soundtrack as well. I think that's a pretty underrated part of this movie. Very intense. It had its own signature flair, just kind of made the movie feel larger than life and made it feel grand. And James Wan, I don't know if he's really known for soundtracks, but you see you hear this type of soundtrack in a movie like Saw, like the Saw franchise. It really is reminiscent of that, so that's a cool little thing. I just love the music, and this is a film that has some jump scares in it, and just the sound design as well with the score, building everything up was awesome. And there being genuine terror is something that I very much much appreciated. This was a genuinely scary movie to an extent. There were some jump scares. I got yippy a little bit. You know, this movie got me a couple of times, so that's awesome. The first horror movie I've seen on the channel in a while that was genuinely scary at times, and that just attributes to the amazing directing of Mr. Wan, just being so effective with horror movies. Just visually as well. You know, just talking about the visuals of this movie is fantastic. I like the character design of Gabriel. I like the color palette. I like the shots. I like the fight scenes. Quite amazing stuff. Like, for a horror film, especially the action scenes and those sequences are fucking crazy. Just the aesthetic is super cool to me. Some people didn't like the CGI nature of Gabriel, but I thought he looked mythical and cool, and I think it fit in the movie pretty well to me. I love when the world changes as well, and Madison changes to the victim's house. It just looks so cool, and the effects were very well executed, very well done. Has a video game flavor to it, kind of like a Silent Hill type of vibe there. Love the mixture of sort of like slasher, cat and mouse, as well as sort of a thriller action horror with mystery elements with the cops. So much to it, man. It's a hell of a ride. You even get some like psychological horror in there. It combines a lot of genres into one. It does it very well. It doesn't feel overwhelming at all. I think it's a really good movie. Getting into the bad, I think the worst part about this movie, and really the only thing I have to talk about for this section, is the dialogue and kind of how the characters express themselves at times. There are a lot of corny, a lot of generic elements, a lot of cheesy elements to this movie. Yeah, very cliche, some of the things that are said. It's like you put ChatGPT, like, give me a sentimental message or give me an emotional scene for a horror movie. Not getting too deep into Gabriel, because I think that character is iconic. Pretty iconic, actually. But the way his voice sounds, the way he says things is quite generic and exactly what you would expect out of James. And I'm not a huge fan of that. That is one thing that James Wan didn't really break the norm of, didn't really break away from in this film, was just how his villain sounded. I liked the design, I liked how the villain looked, but the way he sounded, like with the radio transmission, it kind of made me mad sometimes. Like, in the way he said shit, and some of the words he said. I don't know. Also, Sydney seemed like kind of an idiot, to be honest. I wasn't a huge fan of her character. She was like a waiter at some dumb restaurant. I don't really know. Never really got into her character. I think she's one of the only truly flawed characters besides Gabriel's voice, but that's just him being a villain. There you go. Those are my only problems, though. As we get into the mixed, honestly, most of these lean into like a positive direction. Most of these are more good than bad, but I wanted to put some stuff in the mixed section. The okay, let's get it. For how many twists there are in this movie, I still feel like at the end of the day, you kind of know how the movie will see itself out. Now, to get there and to develop it, and the storylines they used, and some of the plot decisions, those were crazy. But I know you knew at the end of the day that this was going to be a Victor, happily ever after kind of movie. You know, that whole shtick. That's not always the greatest thing in the world. Like, sometimes the bad guys have to win. I'm not trying to be that fucking guy, but I have seen so many movies. At this point, we've covered so many movies on the channel that you get to movies like this, it ends that way, and you're like, well, okay. And I obviously like the whole ending scene where the light's like buzzing, possibly hinting at a sequel. Now, I'll put something on the screen if there's any hints at a sequel. I don't know if there is or not. There you go. I'm looking back on it, I thought it was comical, actually. This movie had a lot of comedic elements to it. You know how generic and cliche certain moments were in this movie? I'm gonna kind of contradict myself, I feel like, but, you know, how it was shot sometimes, the effects sometimes. I think it is funny, though. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It actually added some, like, comedic effect to it, which maybe James Wan wasn't intending on, but there you go. Just wanted to put it out there. This movie had its moments. Let's just say that. You know, the way her house was shot was kind of funny and cartoony, kind of reminded you of how they did shots in, like, the Beetlejuice movies. Even the way the character moved was a little cheesy, but again, some of these things made the movie fun, made it more cartoony, made it more campy, made it more kind of, I don't know, you know what I mean? Sometimes they do a little too much with the effects and the scares, especially compared to other James Wan movies, but I wasn't too bothered by it in this movie. You know, they use CGI, which you normally don't see in a James Wan film. There you go. I'm a little delayed, am I? Fuck. Okay, hopefully the delay doesn't get too bad. We are almost done with the video. Let's get into the review. I'm just going to go ahead and say it, tier list time. This is a flat out 7 out of 10. I think this is a perfect example of a 7 out of 10. I feel like I'm getting a little lazy with my reviews, but I think this is genuinely a 7 out of 10. For the setup, for what the movie does, I think it does just fine, but it didn't completely blow me away. It wasn't super astounding. And I think the 7s is a perfect range for a movie with that sort of vibe to it. I'm starting to see more and more movies now, and I'm getting to the point where I can sort of expect the directions that these movies go in, and I have seen concepts very similar to this, where you have a twin or a baby or something genetically connected to you that kind of takes over your life in a malicious way. Take Rosemary's Baby for an example. Even like The Omen kind of has that, with Damien being like this satanic child. I don't know, not to say this concept isn't awesome and well executed, but again, the shock factor and the wowness of it is only so high. It only meets a certain bar of that. You know, again, I like the gore. I like how gnarly this film can get at times. It is a horror movie. It is a true to form James Wan horror movie with damn near even more blood than most of his movies. But still, it gets to a point we're going to start seeing movies that if they don't wow me, you're probably going to get a mid review like this. And a 7 is still good. That's still satisfactory. That's still like, for what this movie is and what genre it is in and what tropes it has, it does its job. I don't really have much to say. 7 out of 10. Leave it at that. That is going to do it for the video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, it has been GZTV. Coming up, I will be watching The Hangover. I will be rewatching that again with my dad, because originally I watched it in my dorm at college with my roommates, but I want to watch it again and cover it on the channel, kind of continue our comedy journey. We've been covering all sorts of those movies, and I want to get through them all. I have a long-ass list of those movies still yet to come, so stay tuned. If you're a big comedy fan, obviously Squid Game, we will continue to talk about that. There you go. I'm out, guys.